You know how if you ask a child to draw a picture of a house, you get that square box, 4 windows, door in the middle, pointy roof. If you ask someone to draw a picture of a portable stereo radio cassette, you're going to end up with something that looks like the image behind me here, or the one that's on my neon display. It's got that same oblong shape, circles either side, square in the middle, which is of course the cassette deck. And yet, despite that being the kind of standard look for these things, in amongst all the different models that I've got, I don't have a classic one that looks like this. So I thought I should rectify that. And I went on eBay, had a look for a similar model, but one that I could repair that was at a reasonable price. I bought one. Let's see how I got on with it. Right, let's see what state this thing's in. Oh, we've got the manual as well. Cool. First thing I've noticed, that screw just fell out the back, which is a bit of a concern. And also, there's a rattle. So something's floating about in here that shouldn't be. Yeah, it looks like it needs a really good clean, but everything's here. All the switches and buttons are intact. Let's just open it up. Now, that isn't unusual. They are supposed to open like that. There's no dampening on these ones. But the first thing we need to do is plug it in and see what on it works. Oh, hold on. They're all falling out, these. That's weird, isn't it? So, I've had 3 of those fall out the back already. I think there's only a couple more in there. Right, plug on, power on. I presume there's just the one light supposed to be in this section here, because it's in the centre of the tuning dial. And then moving this shows us the battery level on the left, which we use in the mains power, so of course it's full. And the tuning for the radio. But it's all working as far as the radio goes. It's going to be the tape that's the issue. Let's just open it up. Whoops, wrong one. And just see if it spins. Yeah, we're not getting anything there. Oh, that pin's sticking out the middle of there. That's not right, is it? Just see if it locates properly. Yeah. Okay, so we're getting no movement out of that, which isn't a surprise. So we need to sort that part out. Let's just see what else we've got here. So this is interesting. On the front here, we've got a phono input. You see on the right, we've got a ground connector. That would pinch the wire in the centre there. And then we've got the phono left and right. So we've got a phono stage in here. Going through the rest of the stuff on here, loudness, manual recording level, bass and treble, individual left and right for the volume. Notice there's a bit of crackle on there. It's hard to tell with all this static, but I think we need to clean the pots a little bit. We've got an edit button on the top there, and then we've got APSS to skip forward and back through the cassette automatically. The automatic program search system, is that? Yeah, so over on the right here, first off, we've got the mic input. It looks like there's something missing from there. I think it would locate in that hole at the top, perhaps a surround for this 3.5mm jack. Then we've got the fader control for the mic. We can switch that section in or out. The record mode, automatic level control or manual using the controls on the left. Chrome or normal tape, no option for metal on here. And then for the radio, stereo wide, stereo or mono. I think that's pretty much it. Now there's a bit more on the back. So starting from the left here, we've got more mic inputs separated out into right and left stereo. We've also got a remote control socket in the middle there for a wide remote, which is usually the switch on your microphones to pause the recording from the microphone's end. We've got a DIN plug that's labelled up as tape. I presume that's going to be tape in and out. We'll find out when we look at the manual in a moment. We've got speaker outputs here, and then we've got a beat cut or beat cancel switch, which is used if you're recording off long wave or medium. You get a whistle on your recording, move that into the opposite position. Not something I need to use here because I can barely pick anything up on medium wave or long wave. And then moving over here, we've got a switch, which is just your on-off switch for the mains. I'm going to leave that in the on position. Yeah, it turns out it's handy having this because it enables me to confirm a couple of things. For example, the DIN plug on the back, that is an input and output. They use an example here of plugging it into an amplifier or a radio. So you can play the radio through here, or you can amplify the tape out from the boombox over your main system. I'm not sure how you select anything that's plugged into the back of here though, because there's no switch on the device to choose the auxiliary input, which effectively is what the DIN plug is. Maybe it's just live all the time the device is switched on, but you can see here the wiring at the bottom shows a left and right, in and out. And then another thing that's confirmed, this little socket on the top for the microphone that I thought might be missing a surround. No, that's how it's supposed to look, because that little top hole is actually for plugging in one of those remote sockets again for a microphone. So yeah, it all looks in pretty good condition, other than I'm a little bit concerned that somebody's already taken the screws out, and I wonder if that means they've already knackered this thing up on the inside. We need to have a good look at this. Let's take the rest of the screws out and see what we find. Okay, so we've got the two halves apart. Some of those screws were a little bit tricky to get out, and then some came out way too easily. And the reason for that, well, it's this stuff that was rattling around inside, little bits of grey plastic. Those originally came from these pegs here. Oops, that one fell off in my fingers. Right, so there's a bit more of it. Let me show you what the problem is. Okay, so if you look at these, you can see these three are all broken. That one is still intact. And I suspect this is something that's only just happened whilst this device was being shipped to me. You see, these are where the screws locate that go through the back of the case. And all the screws were still in it, but they were loose. And I think those screws would have gone missing if this had happened previously. So I think we've just had a bit of a jolt during shipping. It was very well packaged, but unfortunately we're dealing with brittle old plastics. They've snapped these tower peg hole thingamajigs here. And as a result, now I'm going to have to build those up again before I put the case back together, so that when we put a screw through from the back of the case, it remains held together rather than falling out again, like so. Anyway, that's something to deal with later. What we need to do now is get on with the cassette deck. Now, to give myself a little bit more room to work, I'm going to disconnect this section here, which attaches to this part with just 4 wires, and they're all on sockets. So I could just unplug those and get this out of the way. Okay, so here's where the wires come in. The right-hand channel uses a yellow wire and a black. The left hand uses a white wire and a black. Now, down at the bottom here, on the circuit board, there's a W next to the position for the white wire, so you can't mix them up. However, on this side, they're both black wires, and that one's labelled up as black. So I don't know whether it matters if I mix those two up, but just to be on the safe side, I'm going to put a label around the left-hand one so I don't swap them around. Right, so I'm free to move this out of the way now. Let's plug some power into this and see exactly what's going on with this cassette deck, because there was no action out of it before. I'm hoping to see some kind of movement. Right, I can feel the motors going. So the main belt is off the back there, so none of this is moving at all because of that. So we need to take the whole mechanism out, and I believe to do that, I've got to remove this section off the top, and I think you might have to take the buttons off as well. So I'll start on that end of things and work my way back to this, and then there's a few wires to come out, and we can take the whole mechanism out, flip it over and see what's going on back here. Now, I'm following a tip that I saw on a video. The only reason I'm able to make this video is by following other ones on YouTube where people were taking these apart. Otherwise, I don't think I would have bought this one. So it just shows you how useful YouTube is. I'll link you to the videos that I've watched before making this one so that you can have a look at those as well. Yeah, no, this really does need a good dust. It's a well-used example. Just have a look down here. You can see all the accumulated fluff inside there. That is quite a mess. What we need to do now is remove this dial off the front here. Now you'll notice on the right there, that's our tuning needle. We've got to be careful because that's attached to the back. So what we have to do here is remove all the screws from the front section, then slide it under there. And the reason we have to take this out is because this tape mechanism rests behind it. So we're going to get the front section out so we can lift that out. Right, so this should now lift up and under. It's stuck to this VU meter here. I don't think it's supposed to be. There we go. Just slide that carefully under there. Okay, so we've got these 4 Phillips screws holding this whole section in, but there's also wires going off to this circuit board, so we need to unplug it first and then we can lift the whole thing out. So we've got this socket here. It's quite tricky to get a good angle on some of these things with the light, so if it goes a bit blurry I apologise, but that's one of those out. Then we've got this green wire which goes up to there. And then the last one that needs to come out is this here. A little bit tricky to get to. There we go. Right, so just these 4 Phillips screws to come out now, and this whole section should lift out from the carcass. All these screws are different sizes to one another, so I'm going to have to keep them organised. There we go. Got to waggle it out. Check nothing's attached. No. Right. Now again, one of the tips from a video I was watching was to put the screws back where they came from. That way you can't muddle them up, and I think that's a good idea. Right, so we're done with this section for the moment. I'll return back to it later though, because I need to deox some of the potentiometers and give the thing a good clean. But we can just get it out of the way now and then start working on this cassette mechanism. Okay, well, the first thing I've noticed is it's incredibly dirty again. It needs a good blowout with some compressed air to clean all that. But let's just have a look at this side. See why it wasn't moving at all. Well, I'm surprised by that. The belt is still here and it looks all right. So this motor's been spinning. I can see what's happened. You see that? The motor's spinning, but the flywheel on the right isn't moving. That's because this has become quite stuck to that flywheel. Yeah, it's hard to move that through there, and as a result it's gone a little bit loose as well, and that's just spinning in position. So yeah, we need to replace this belt, but we also need to try and get rid of some of this fluff. So I need to just find my air blowing device and take it out in the garden and give it a good blast, I think, before we start working on it. Okay, well that's a little bit less disgusting, so we'll move on. But the first thing I've noticed is I'm missing a belt. This one here is for the counter, which needs a good clean as well. But there should be another one that goes around this wheel here and down to there. So that's not here. And I've had a look inside the case, just in case it's sitting in there, and it's nowhere to be found, which is a little bit concerning. Maybe it fell out the cassette door at some point. I mean, all this bit is near the front, so perhaps it popped out of there, but very unusual not to find it at all in here. But the belt we need to sort out at the moment, at least, is the main one at the back here. However, there's another thing that's a little bit hidden in these. Before we need to sort that out, we need to get access to the base of the capstan. Down here, that's the capstan that my finger's on. Underneath there, there's a rubber idler wheel. And that comes into contact with this. This has got a rubber outside to it as well, so it pushes against that. And those turn to gunk, and I think it's done that in here. So to be able to get to that, we need to remove this. And to do that, we need to pull the whole flywheel out from this side and swap it out. And I bought a kit for this, and it just so happens in here we've got the parts we need, rather obviously. We've got a new pinch roller, which I'm going to swap out as well. Might as well while we're here. We've got an idler tyre, which I think someone's just cut off a little bit of plastic tubing, but that should do the job. And then two belts. Oh, hold on, sorry, three belts, which of course we've got the two for the top and then the larger flat one for the bottom. So yeah, let's start off by removing this cover here. If we take these screws out, we should be able to get into here and then pull this out from this side. But I think we need to take that plastic bit off the top of there as well. So we need to slide that up like so. Just checking it doesn't have a particular way up it needs to go. No, I think that's right. Both sides look the same. We need to clean that as well. And then I think there's a little washer on here that needs to come out, and then we can pull that whole thing through. So let's start on this side. Actually, before I do that, I just want to put this down on something a little bit softer. We're already on a soft surface here, but we've got a lot of brittle plastic. We don't want to snap anything else off, so I'm going to get a cloth and lay it on that instead. Right, let's lift this off. Now, we've got to be careful here. You can see how there's a spring-loaded section which goes over that peg there. We want to make sure we don't lose any of that stuff. Let's hope the spring doesn't come flying off there. No, we're all right. Yeah, it's like a solenoid. Okay, let's just lay that down there carefully. Does that unplug? It'd be nice if it did. No. Okay, well, we'll leave that for the moment then. Right, so here's our belt. That's going in the bin. It feels very solid. Very little spring left in that at all. Yeah, that's gone. Okay, so now we need to get this out. Yes, that's a bit mucky. Where's our idler tyre gone? That's the question. Well, that's a bit concerning. The thing that was in here that looked a little bit like that, although I think it would be shorter, has vanished, and that's because it's turned to gunk. Okay, this is hard to show even with a macro lens, but just to give you an idea, here's the capstan, and it came out of there. It goes in from the bottom. I'm doing it from the top at the moment, but basically it comes out of the top there and goes all the way through to the other side. In the process of doing that, it comes through this little gap in the middle here. And inside there is supposed to reside a bit of this rubber tubing on the capstan. And it's not there. And I could just pull that capstan out from the other side and there's nothing left behind except on this rubber wheel here. Don't know if you can make this out, but on the outside of there, there's quite a bit of gunk. Not that much though, so I am concerned as to where the rest of this has gone, but it has vanished, and maybe if I could take this whole thing out, I could have a good look at that and clean underneath it. We might try and do that. I'm expecting this to be a split washer, but my old eyes aren't seeing that very well. There we go. Right, so that's our washer. We'll just pop that to one side, and now hopefully we can take this out. I think we've got it moving. Hold on. There we go. No. Was I wrong? Is it moving? Looks like it's coming out, doesn't it? Ooh. You know what? I'm glad I did that. Look at that. Need to make sure that washer stays in place, so let's push that back down again. Right, I think I'm going to take this tyre off this wheel so I can give it a good clean, because you can see the muck's got underneath there somehow. Also, this feels a little bit dry, and I did buy myself a new tyre. So let's clean this off properly, put the new tyre on, and then we know we're good to go. So let's put this new one on here. Yeah, that looks good to me. Right, now you remember when we pulled the capstan through, it went from this side down and out the other side, and it just so happens that while it went through there, it pulled a lot of black gunk along with it. So we need to make sure that this is nice and clear and doesn't look anything like that. So we'll just keep working through there until we're happy that we've got all the black stuff out. Otherwise that flywheel just isn't going to move properly. Now, I've cleaned the muck from perished belts up before, but nothing has been like this. Fortunately, I've got these little sticks and I can spin them around inside. And as you can see now, it's coming out pretty much clean. But it's taken that many to get to this point. Perhaps about half an hour of cleaning there. But it's possible that that was the easy part, because now this is the replacement for the thing that turned to gunk. That's got to go inside that hole there, around the capstan, which has got to come in from the other side. And I'm not sure whether they've cut this to the right length. I'll clean off the capstan and see exactly how long this is, and then we'll do a bit of a measurement and see if it could fit in there. Right, so here's the capstan. We'll pop it through from the other side. You can see it goes all the way up to there. So it's on this small area that this thing sits in. I think that is too long. Right, so I'm sure there's a cleverer way of doing this, but this is what I'm going to do. We'll push the stick through to the other side like so. We'll mark a circle on it here. There you go. And then if I pull that through and we have it pop out the top like that, and then just pop it in a little bit more, hold it in that position, mark this again, right, and then we pull that out. That is the absolute maximum length that this thing could be, and I think it needs to be a little bit shorter than that. So let's see what this thing is. Ah, yeah, it is the right length after all. Just about. Okay. So now we need to get that on the capstan. This is going to be the trickiest part, I think. Right, now this is something that definitely I won't be able to get on video because I need to be able to see where the camera's looking. But you get the idea. We have to somehow get that into that hole and then over the capstan. So give me a few minutes or an hour and we'll see how I get on. Right, so I've finally managed to get that rubber into this tube, but I'm pretty sure there's no chance of it spinning around. It's so tight top to bottom that there's just no play in there at all. So the capstan isn't going to spin around if I use this. So what I need to do is take it back out again, I think. And we just need to shorten it down because it doesn't need to fit from the top to the bottom of this. It just needs to fit enough so that it grips onto the wheel at the top here. So let's just pop this back out again. There we go. And I'm going to shorten that down. Now, I've done some frustrating repairs in the past, but this one really takes the biscuit. Anyway, I think we're getting somewhere now. See inside there, we've got the rubber wheel on, and it should be rotating with the capstan, which it is. First thing we have to do is put the little pulley thing on the top here. So with that in place, that's not going to fall out now. Now, if you can remember back that far, I originally started taking this thing apart to swap the belts in it. We need to get to the one on the other side first of all. But one thing I'm not going to do just yet is pop this wheel back on the top, just in case I need more access to this area, because we're going to be swapping out this pinch roller in a bit. But let's flip it over and get back to swapping belts. Right, now as always before swapping a belt out, you want to make sure the thing that it's going on is clean. There's no residue from the previous belt on there. Both of these look fine, but I'm going to clean them anyway, and then we can pop the belt on. Right, so compared to what we were doing before, this is nice and simple, just a flat belt that goes around the motor and then around this flywheel. Okay, we can put the cover back on that again now. Right, now you'll remember that the solenoid was attached to this cover and the centre part of that has fallen out. It doesn't matter, it just sits in there like so, but we need to make sure that we put that back on when we relocate this. Right, well I think we're done on this side, so we'll flip it over, start working on the other stuff. Right, so I'm going to replace the pinch roller while we're here. We've got a nice new clean one, and in there we've got an old one that's really quite brown. I'd imagine it's perished as well. So whilst we've got it open, might as well do it. Not quite as easy as it looks though, because whilst it's here, and you can imagine you could just pop it off and then stick that in and put it back on again. No, you have to kind of work your way back to this circuit board. So the first thing to come out is this, then there's a spring, then there's a section here. And I only know this from watching YouTube videos on it. Otherwise I probably would be struggling with this for hours. So at least now I know the process. I'm going to show it to you. And if you ever get hold of one of these, then it won't be as much of a problem for you either. Right, so the circuit board just moves out of the way. That gives us access to this spring here. I think you could perhaps get round the side of that, but you don't want to damage anything, so it's easy just to get that out of the way. So the next job is just to remove this. We have to get that spring out of the way, so we just pop it off the edge here, and just being careful not to break any of this rather brittle plastic. There we go, got it over the top. Okay, so take that out of there. Right, and still we can't get to this without removing all this stuff, and the first thing we have to do with that is to take off this little washer on the top. There we go. Right, now we've got another spring that needs to come out, this one here. So again, just lift it off this part, and it goes under that little bit on the right there. So I just got to remember which way round it goes. Steps down like that. Right, so now I believe these sections can come off. I think that whole bit's coming off in one go. There we go. Now there's a spring on here, and we don't really want to mess with that. But you can see why this has to be removed, because that bit there goes underneath here, and that's the section we need to get out. So we just need to lift this up a little bit and move it out of position like that. That then enables us to lift this out of the case. There we go. Right. Now this is the first time I've ever swapped out a pinch roller. You can see here we've got quite a bit of build up on there, and it's possible you could clean it off, but since I've got a replacement and they don't cost very much, might as well swap this. So to get this out, we have to push the pin through the middle. You've got to be careful we don't break anything. It's moving. I'll see if I can get it with the pliers. It doesn't matter too much if this bit gets scratched, because that resides inside the plastic. It's the centre part we want to keep nice and smooth. So we'll just see if we can get this out this way. Yep, seems to be coming. There we go. So now we could take the wheel out and swap it for a new one. That wasn't too difficult. Just got to make sure that goes through the centre. And there we go. We have swapped our first pinch roller, and it's looking good. Right, let's pop that back in again. Right, I just needed a bit of a wiggle, and it's on there now. So we can pop this back over the top. Ease that down there. Yeah, that's in place. And then that goes over the top like that. And then the circuit board. Okay, I think it's finally time to put this back on. So let's just put that over the top. And then we've got to put that little tiny washer back on the top again. Easier said than done. Okay, next job, we're going to put the two belts on the top here. I'm going to start with the one for the counter. To take it off, we have to remove the counter. You can see there that the belt goes right up to the top, so there's no way to get it past there without taking this section out. And you take it out with a screw on the other side here. So we'll just undo this, and then we can get the belt from underneath the counter. Right, just drop that screw out. Okay, so the counter is here. Now, this is a good opportunity to clean this. Right, so I've got a lightly dampened cloth here. Let's see what difference this makes. Yeah, that's significant. Right, let's work our way around here then. Right, yeah, that looks a lot neater. Okay, let's pop it back in. Okay, so to put this on, we're going to put it around this pulley here, and then make sure it's still on there while we pop that back into its position and bring this across to the other end, like so. And we're going to make sure that this isn't catching on anything. And I can just put the screw in and hold this in place. Okay, so that's the new counter belt on, and it does just clear that piece of metal in the middle. It's a very tight tolerance, but it's not rubbing against anything, so it's in the right position. So just one more to go, and it's this one that runs from this wheel here up to that one. And I've looked at both these, they're both clean, no problems with any residue on them now, so let's just get this in position. Okay, well that's that done. The counter's still working. I'll just show you on here, I don't know if you can read this. got a date on there, 1984, September. So that gives you a good idea as to when this machine was put together. Okay, so that's everything mechanical that needed to be done with this, at least I hope so. My next jobs therefore are to clean these heads with a bit of isopropyl alcohol, and I also want to attempt to clean up these rather mucky looking buttons before I put this back inside the case. Right, well that's as good as I can get it, so I think we're done with this. Let's pop it to one side and have a look at the rest of it. Right, well it's not essential, but we might as well give the inside of this a bit of a clean while we're here. Now I think these switches will look a lot nicer if I can just clean these parts that surround them. So let's see if we can take one of these out without damaging it. Of course, while I've got these covers removed, I'm going to spray inside these potentiometers with some contact cleaner to prevent any crackling. So of course I'm going to do the same thing with this side around these switches, but I think you can see from looking at the circuit board that there's so much dust on here. I might as well take this outside and blow it with some air to get rid of all that before I put everything back together again. And it looks like this stuff has done its job, because I think it's to prevent water or liquids getting down into these switches, because if you have a look at the bottom of these, they're all quite green, so I think something's been sitting around the bottom of there, but fortunately they all still work. Right, now when it comes to spraying contacts, pots, etc, I tend to use this stuff, and people tell me off often in the comments, you shouldn't use WD-40, not realising that WD-40 became a brand a while ago rather than just the one product, and one of the products they sell under that brand is contact cleaner. This is readily available in the UK and doesn't cost too much, so that's why I tend to use it. However, not too long ago I bought some deoxit. They don't tend to sell this normally in the UK, pretty expensive if anywhere does stock it, but this is deoxit fader F5. Supposedly it's better for cleaning faders and it lubricates them as well. Let's just spray a little bit in each of these, just a tiny bit, and then work them up and down. I've got quite a few to go out. I've got all these on the top here. I've got the switches on the right, which I don't know if they need it, but I'm going to do it anyway. And then finally we've got that record switch device in the middle there, but we'll get to that at the end. I think if I spray through one of these holes, we're probably going to get it in the right place, hopefully. I can see a spring down here, so it's going to be to this side of it. That might be a bit much, but I'm sure it'll do the job. Right, well that's everything cleaned, or at least as best as I can do it, so I think it's time to put this cassette deck back in place. Right, so that seems in the correct position. Let's pop all the screws back in. We'll power this up and see if it works. Right, we'll pop the power in the side and press play. And there we go. I can't really test it with a cassette just yet, I don't think, because the front section holds the cassette a little bit out from the mechanism, so that needs to be in place to play a tape properly. So we'll come back to that in a bit, but first I need to put this part on the front, put the panel on the top, and then put the switches on top of that. Yeah, now before I put this on, this needs a good clean as well. We've got quite a bit of built up gunk in the corners, so let me just give this a good wipe over. I think this thing's come up nicely. It's a piece of plastic, this, it's not metal, and it's important to try and get the trim pieces like this in decent condition. If you get a machine where one of these is cracked or a big gouge in it or something, you're going to struggle to repair that. But as it is, just a bit of cleaning, it's come up almost as good as new, I'd say. Right, so this has to be hinged in, so that the silver bit goes underneath the trim on the back. There we go. I forgot I need to clean these as well, so give me a minute. Now whilst that top panel is made of plastic, these are metal. They've got a plastic insert to hold them to the switches, but the part that you hold with your fingers, that's metal, and it gives you a nice feeling of quality when you're operating this. Okay, with all that in place, let's move on to the other half of the case. Right, now first job with this is give it a good clean up as well. The tuning dial window here is really quite dusty on the inside, so it'll make a big difference getting that nice and clear. You can see how much has come off there then. So I'm going to spend a bit of time giving this a clean as well. Not going to subject you to every part of that, but the first thing I need to do is take off the cassette door here to enable me to get inside the cassette well. And we can also give the inside of this a good, well overdue clean. Now I'm not using any cleaning products here, I'm just using a damp cloth and a bit of time. And you know what, it's coming up really nicely this, look at that. Right, now while I was cleaning it I noticed there's a little crack just down here. It stops at about that point, so it's not coming apart, but I might as well just stick a little bit of glue in here to hold it back together again. Right, so overall the case is in really good condition on the outside. The main issue we've got though is with the inside of it. That's broken, that's broken, that's broken, that's broken, and that's broken. So that's not going to hold together very well. So my plan is to build these back up again. And I'm going to do that with Sugru, which is a mouldable glue. It's like a plasticine really that you shape to the right size, and then it'll harden up after a period of time and become effectively a new plastic peg. So this screwdriver, if I put it into this one here that's still intact, I can see it's about the right thickness and just a little bit longer. So I'm going to build those up around this, around the outside of it. Now with this you can see where the top of it is supposed to be, but some of these are so broken off, like this one at the back here, that I'm going to have to build up quite a bit around there. But that's my plan, build up little Sugru towers all around here, and then I'll be able to screw these back in from the other side again. And this one that I thought was all right has got a crack down it, so I might as well put a bit on there to strengthen that up as well. So that's it, we've got them all in place now. We just need to leave this for perhaps 24 hours to set, and hopefully that's going to be strong enough so that we can put the case back together again. Okay, so I've left it 24 hours. I can tell the Sugru has now set. It doesn't feel malleable at all. This one here is pretty much Sugru all the way up, and that feels nice and solid. So I'm hoping when I put the back on and put these screws through, they'll locate in the right position, and then as I tighten them up, they'll score a spiral in the Sugru, and that will then hold them in position. Right, so I need to line these up again, so that we can fold it back on itself. And of course we need to put the speaker wires back where they came from. I have to be careful when I put these two parts back together to line that up with this hole here. In fact, I'm going to start at that end and work my way along. Right, so that's in. Is that flush? Looks it. Not sure about the bottom, hold on. No, that wire, that needs to go inside. Now before I put any screws in this, I think we should test it out. Right, let's try this tape. I don't want to risk anything that's precious to start with. That looks to be running fast. And I can't hear anything. What the heck's going on? I don't know if you can hear that, but it's running at twice the speed it should be. And you can hardly hear anything. Double checking, it is 240 volts, so I'm using it on the right voltage. There's no selector on here. I'll try and clean off these battery contacts, and we'll just try running it from batteries, see what happens. Yeah, same problem. At least we know it's not the power. Hold on, let's just make sure nothing's stuck down. Right, fast forward, rewind, play. Oh, I think we're back on again. Yeah, I'm going to just double check those speaker wires before I screw it all back together again, but I think that might be about as good as I'm going to get it. Right, I really thought I'd snatched defeat from the jaws of victory then. Right, so it's packed together in one piece, finally. It looks really good. It will play tapes, but more on that later. However, going back to the repairs, the main issue we had with this wasn't swapping out the belts. That was relatively easy. It was that little rubber idler tube that had just what seemed like vanished, but it turns out it had dissolved and spread itself all over the inside of a difficult to access metal cowling, which ended up me using most of my little cleaning sticks to try and get that gunk out of there. And that bit wasn't shown in any of the repair videos that I saw online. If I knew that this was going to be like that, I might have chosen a different model to have a go at. Anyway, we got there in the end. We got all that cleaned out and we got it playing tapes. And then also we've got the deal with the plastic pegs in the back where the screws are supposed to go into, the mounting parts. But with those being broken off, I could replace them with a Sugru. I wouldn't really recommend that as a proper solution for all of them though, because it does seem a little bit soft once the screws got into it. I think it could be easily pulled out. Fortunately, we'd still got some of those mountings that were intact. So I think there were 3 that are properly holding the thing together. And then the Sugru ones are just lightly holding it together, but combined, it's stayed together in one piece. The front's not going to fall off. So enough chat about what we've done. Let's have a look at what it can do. Okay, well, first off, the radio works just fine. It picks up everything that I'd expect, and it's easy to tune in. Of course, I'm able to record off the radio, and the recording I made here sounded pretty much indistinguishable from the original.
Not future years or things in further in time. And as a government, you cannot operate with that £22 billion black hole in the public finances for this financial year, not future years or...
The program search feature works as it should, allowing you to either fast wind to the beginning or the end of the currently playing track. With certain types of music, the tape playback can sound okay, but as soon as you start playing any music that has a bit of a sustain to some notes, you'll pick up on a speed variance, a wobbliness to the audio that's really quite noticeable at times. It actually didn't sound that bad there in the edit, but trust me, it is pretty wobbly. Anyway, moving back to the positives, the tape counter is working, as are all the lights, and that includes the one for the VU meters, the FM tuning indicator, and both those APSS direction indicators. The sliders and the switches are all crackle free now, and activating the loudness does make a significant difference in making the sound more appealing at lower volume levels. The mono, stereo and wide stereo switch works on both the radio and the tape, and the wide option also produces a pleasing effect. Now behind these 2 grills at the top corners, that's the microphones. So we've got stereo mics on this, and if I just press record now, it's going to be listening to me. You can see the VU meters bouncing around there. We've got it on the automatic recording level. I'll just stick it into manual, and then I can move the recording level sliders all the way up to the top. So that's the maximum sensitivity. Let's just rewind and have a listen. Going to be listening to me. You can see the VU meters bouncing around there. We've got it on the automatic recording level. I'll just stick it into manual, and then I can move the recording level sliders all the way up to the top. So that's the maximum sensitivity. Let's just rewind and have a listen. And as you can hear, that was a pretty good recording. So I can imagine a lot of people recording a playback of their musical instruments on this, and they'd be able to get a pretty good demo tape together without all the external microphones. So overall, this is a perfectly fine portable stereo cassette player of its time. It's not the top of the line, it's not the bottom of the range, it's got some nice features on. The program search, whilst it will only let you search one track in either direction, it's still a nice feature to have to be able to get back to the beginning of the song that you're on or skip to the next one. The phono stage input, that's not something you see on a lot of boom boxes. And on the top here, there's a button labelled up as edit. And that's not something I've seen on a lot of devices, although I have seen it before. And what it does is mute the recording without stopping the tape from moving. So whilst pause pauses the tape, edit just mutes the audio that's going onto it. So it could be useful, for example, if you were recording off the radio and you just wanted to mute out all the inane jibber jabber from the DJ while keeping the tape moving. And of course we've got things like the fader control for the mic input, so you could use it as a karaoke device. I'm sure you'll be happy to know that I'm not going to submit you to that today, but overall, yeah, perfectly pleasant device. Really nice sound quality when it's playing the radio or something that it's capable of playing properly. When it comes to the cassette deck, well, that is showing its age, and also it really needs another going over. I didn't quite get it right this time. It's playing okay, but it's really rather wobbly. I'm not going to hook it up to the wow and flutter meter because it would just register as yes, it has all the wow and all the flutter. But, you know, it sounds okay once it gets going with the right kind of music. It just needs a proper going over to get that mechanism working as it should. But I don't think it'll ever be as good as it was when it was new. Now, I hope this video gave you an idea as to what might be involved in trying to repair something like this. Now, with this one, I think it's always going to be something that's nicer to look at than it is to listen to. There's such a wobble on the tape playback that I don't know whether it's really worth me revisiting this, but I've run out of time to do any more in this video. I'd really need to go all the way back to the beginning and have a look through that whole mechanism and try and figure out exactly what's wrong with it. And as I say, I'm not entirely sure it would be worthwhile in the end. However, it does play tapes. Whether you want to actually listen to any on this, that's another thing. Now, one thing that's often said about devices like this, or of this age, is that, oh, back then they made things that were designed to be repaired. And I don't think that's necessarily true. When they were making things back when this was in the factory, they were being assembled by just normal people. And as a result, there had to be things that could be put together by normal people with sockets and things that you could hold in your hand. They weren't microscopic devices. But as soon as those factories could get rid of that workforce, replace it with robots and machines that would do a similar thing, then they could have more quicker, highly automated production. And that's when things started to get into that era of you can't really repair those anymore because they weren't put together by people, therefore they can't be taken apart very easily by people. So if I was you and I was looking for something to attempt to repair on, look for something sort of early 80s-ish when we're dealing with big chunky components that plug together and can be unscrewed and removed relatively easily. But even with something like this, you saw I ran into a bit of a difficulty with it, and that black gunk stuff, that was a nightmare. Honestly, I would have picked a different model to this one to repair if I was doing this again. But I hope you enjoyed having a look at this, and that's it for the moment. As always, thanks for watching.